The sky was already dark when the last bus left the street. The lights of the city flickered on one by one, but the air felt cold and heavy. People walked past quickly, busy with their own lives, not noticing the quiet woman standing near the old building with a small child beside her. She held a warm bag in one hand and her child's hand in the other. Her shoulders were tired, and her eyes looked as if they had cried too much. The child was sleepy, leaning against her leg, rubbing his eyes again and again. She had come to this place with hope. Someone had told her that there was a shelter nearby where families could stay for the night. But when she reached the door, she found it locked. A small paper was taped to the glass. It said that the shelter was full and would reopen in the morning. She stared at the paper for a long time. At first, she did not move. It was as if her body refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. Then slowly, her hand began to shake. She looked down at her child and forced a small smile. "Don't worry," she whispered softly. "We'll find something." But she did not know where to go. Earlier that day, she had been asked to leave the small room she rented. The owner had been patient for months, but patience has limits. She had tried to explain that she was searching for work, that she would pay soon, that she just needed a little more time. But words could not change reality. She packed her few clothes, her child's school books, and some old photos into a bag. When she walked out of that room, she felt as if her entire life had been folded into a single suitcase. Now she stood in the street with nowhere to go. Cars passed by, their headlights flashing across her face for a second and then disappearing. People laughed, talked on phones, argued, and hurried home. No one stopped. She felt invisible. Her child tugged her hand gently. "Mom," he said in a small voice, "are we going home?" She swallowed hard. "Yes," she replied, even though she did not know where home was anymore. She started walking slowly down the street. Her legs felt heavy, but she kept moving. Every step felt like a question with no answer. A few minutes later, she heard the soft sound of a car slowing down behind her. She did not turn around at first. Many cars slowed down in traffic, and she did not want to imagine things. But then the car stopped completely. She turned her head slightly and saw a black luxury car parked near the sidewalk. It looked expensive, the kind of car she had only seen in movies or business areas. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall and well-dressed, wearing a simple coat that still looked costly. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, as if he was used to observing everything around him. For a moment, she felt nervous. She held her child's hand tighter. The man looked at her, then at the child, then at the empty bag. He did not speak immediately. "You seem lost," he said gently. She hesitated. Her first instinct was to say no. Pride is strange. It stays even when everything else is gone. But something in his voice did not feel rude or cold. It felt honest. She took a deep breath. I was looking for a shelter," she said quietly, "but it's closed." The man nodded slowly. "And where will you go now?" She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. She looked away, her eyes fixed on the road. The truth was too heavy to say out loud. "I don't know," she finally whispered. There was silence for a few seconds. The street felt quieter than before. The man looked around, then back at her. "Do you have family nearby?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. Friends." She shook her head again. Her child looked up at the man with curious eyes, not understanding the tension. The man took a step closer, but not too close. He seemed careful not to scare her. "I'm not here to bother you," he said, "but it's late and it's cold. You can't stay outside with child." She nodded slowly. She knew he was right. But knowing something and having a solution are two different things. "I don't want to beg," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I never thought I would be in this situation." The man looked at her face carefully. He did not see laziness or dishonesty. He saw exhaustion, fear, and a quiet kind of strength that had been pushed too far. "I'm not asking you to beg," he replied. "I'm asking if you want help for tonight." She looked at him, unsure what to say. She had heard stories of people who offered help but had bad intentions. She had learned to be careful. Her child tugged her hand again. "Mom, I'm tired," he murmured. She looked at her child's face and felt something inside her break. pride suddenly felt small compared to her child's safety. She looked back at the man. "I don't have money," she said honestly. He nodded. "That's okay." She studied his face again, trying to understand him. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. The man paused for a moment. "Because I was once in a situation where someone helped me," he said simply, "and I never forgot that." His words were not dramatic, not emotional. They were quiet and real. She thought for a few seconds. The street felt colder than before. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Just for tonight," she said. "I don't want trouble." "Just for tonight," he agreed. He opened the back door of the car. "You can sit here," he said gently. She hesitated for a moment, then helped her child into the car. The seat felt warm and soft. Her child sighed with relief and leaned back. She sat beside him, still holding her bag tightly, as if afraid that even this moment could disappear. The man got into the front seat and told the driver something quietly. The car started moving. As the car drove through the city, she looked out the window. The lights of shops and buildings passed by like distant dreams. She wondered how her life had reached this point. Not long ago, she had a simple life. It was not rich, but it was stable. She worked hard, took care of her child, and believed that things would slowly get better. But one problem led to another. Her job ended. Bills increased. Support disappeared. And suddenly, she was standing on a street with nowhere to go. The car stopped in front of a modest hotel. It was not luxurious, but it was clean and bright. The man stepped out and walked toward the entrance. After a few minutes, he returned with a key card. "You can stay here tonight," he said, handing her the card. "There's food inside. You can rest." She looked at the card in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded slightly. "Rest well," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." She watched him walk back to his car. The door closed, and the car disappeared into the night. She stood there for a moment, holding the card, feeling something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. She looked at her child, who was already smiling again. "We have a room," she said softly. Her child hugged her tightly. "See, Mom," he said, "I told you it would be okay." She smiled weakly and hugged him back. As they walked into the hotel, she did not know that this night, which started with fear and tears, was the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. The morning light came slowly through the small curtains of the hotel room. The single mother woke up to the sound of her child shifting beside her, soft breathing filling the quiet space. For the first time in many nights, she had slept without fear, without thinking that someone might come and tell her to leave. The bed was not hers, but it was warm and safe, and that was enough. She looked around the room. The floor was clean, the sheets smelled fresh, and there was a small breakfast tray waiting by the table. The sight of it made her chest tighten. It was a simple thing, something she had not expected. Her child sat up and rubbed his eyes, yawning, a small smile spreading across his face. "Mom, this place is nice," he said softly. She smiled, feeling the warmth in her chest. "Yes, it is," she replied, trying to sound calm, though her mind was still racing. She knew this safety was temporary. Tomorrow, or the next day, she would have to figure out what to do. She had no money, no job, and no one she could turn to. As they ate the breakfast together, the child chatting about small things, school, his favorite cartoons, and even the games he wanted to play, she tried to push the worry aside. For a moment, it felt like a normal life again. But reality always finds a way to creep back in. After breakfast, she decided to step outside for a walk. She needed to breathe, to see the world beyond the walls that had held her in fear for so long. The streets were busy with people going to work, children walking to school, and cars moving in a constant rhythm. Life continued around her, as if her struggles were invisible. She thought about the man who had helped her. She didn't even know his name. He had appeared like a shadow in the dark, offering help without expecting anything in return. Most people, she thought, would have driven past. Some would have laughed. Some would have pretended not to see. But he had stopped. He had listened. She didn't know why he had done it. And part of her wondered if it was a mistake. What if he changed his mind? What if someone else came along and told him that helping her was a waste? Her mind kept racing. filled with questions she didn't have answers for. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. She jumped slightly, not expecting anyone. When she opened it, the man was standing there again. He had a calm presence, not imposing, but noticeable. The suit he wore yesterday was replaced by something more casual, but it still carried an air of authority. "Good morning," he said simply. "I hope you slept well." She nodded, unsure what to say. Words felt small compared to what he had done. "Yes," she said finally. "Thank you." He didn't rush inside, and he didn't expect her to explain everything. Instead, he stood quietly, watching her and her child. After a moment, he spoke again. "I want to know a little more about your situation," he said. "Not because I'm curious, but because I need to understand how I can help." She hesitated. Talking about her life, the mistakes, the losses, was never easy. She had learned to keep her story locked inside her heart. But something in his tone made her feel safe. I lost my job a few weeks ago," she began slowly. "And then I couldn't pay the rent. The landlord asked me to leave, and I didn't know where to go. I tried shelters, friends, but no one could help. I didn't want to ask anyone on the street, but I had no choice. I just want to keep my child safe." Her voice trembled slightly, and she paused to take a breath. The child sat quietly listening. She continued, "I'm not asking for charity. I just wanted a place to stay for a night." The man nodded. He didn't interrupt or judge. He simply listened. "I know it's not much," she added, almost as if she had to explain herself. "But we are doing our best. I promise." He smiled faintly, a soft warmth in his expression. "I believe you," he said. "And that's why I want to do more than just a night. But I need to understand what you can do, what skills you have, and what you dream about. Not what's possible right now, but what you could achieve if you had a chance." She looked at him, surprised. No one had ever asked her about her dreams before. Everyone had only ever asked her for money, for favors, or had told her what she could not do. No one had asked what she wanted for herself. I used to work in an office," she said slowly, remembering the days before everything fell apart. "I handled accounts, helped organize things, and worked with clients. I am willing to do almost anything to provide for my child." The man nodded again. "Good. That's a start. Tomorrow, I want you to come to my office. Don't worry about the details yet. Just come and meet some people. No pressure, no judgment. We'll take it step by step." Her heart skipped a beat. The idea of going to a millionaire's office, meeting strangers, and possibly being judged felt overwhelming. But underneath that fear, a small flame of hope ignited. Could this really be an opportunity? I can do that," she said finally, unsure she truly believed it. "Good," he said. "And don't worry about tonight. Focus on resting, spending time with your child. That is more important than anything else." After he left, she closed the door and leaned against it. Her child hugged her tightly, sensing her mixed emotions. "Mom, who was that?" he asked curiously. "I don't know yet," she whispered, "but he wants to help us." The rest of the day passed slowly. She walked with her child through nearby parks, watched him play on swings, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe without fear. She even allowed herself to imagine a life where they could be safe, where they could laugh without worry, and where she could give her child a future she had always dreamed of. That evening, she wrote down everything she wanted to achieve. Small things first: a stable job, a safe place to live, a good school for her child. Then bigger dreams: a home they could call their own, the chance to travel, to learn new skills, to finally leave the constant fear behind. As she put the notebook away, she realized that hope was not just a word. It was a feeling she could hold on to, fragile but real. She looked at her child sleeping peacefully and felt a surge of determination. Whatever came next, she would face it. That night, she barely slept, not because of fear, but because of possibilities. She imagined walking into the office tomorrow, meeting people who could change her life, and starting a new chapter she had never thought possible. She wondered if she could rise to the challenge, if she could prove herself worthy of the second chance. The man's words echoed in her mind. "We'll take it step by step." Step by step. That was all she needed to focus on. One day, one moment, one decision at a time. She didn't need to solve everything today. She only needed to be ready for tomorrow. And when the morning finally came, the sun spilling golden light into the hotel room, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: readiness. Not just for the day, not just for a meeting, but for life. She had been given a chance. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could build a future where she and her child could finally be safe, happy, and free from fear. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could walk forward without looking back. The next morning arrived with a mix of nervous energy and quiet hope. The single mother had spent the night thinking about the meeting she was about to have, about the man who had given her a chance, and about the possibilities that lay ahead. She dressed carefully, choosing her simplest, cleanest clothes. They weren't expensive or flashy, but they were neat, and she wanted to show respect for the opportunity she had been given. Her child sat at the small hotel table, eating breakfast slowly, sensing that something important was about to happen. She smiled at him, trying to hide the nervousness in her chest. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, though even she wasn't completely sure what that meant yet. When she arrived at the office, her heart was racing. The building was tall, glass shining in the morning sun. People in suits walked quickly, talking on phones and carrying folders. Everything looked intimidating, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself that she belonged here as much as anyone else, if only for this chance. The man she had met the night before was waiting in the lobby. He greeted her with a warm smile and guided her through the busy office. They passed cubicles filled with people typing, talking, and moving with purpose. It all seemed overwhelming, yet there was a rhythm to it, a sense that everything had its place. Once they reached the small conference room, he asked her to sit. He poured some water into a glass for her and her child, who had been holding her hand tightly. She was grateful for the small gesture, a reminder that she was being seen and treated with respect. "I want to understand more about you," he said quietly. "Not just your work experience, but your strengths, your skills, and what drives you." She hesitated. Most people in her life had only ever asked for what she could do for them, never for who she truly was. She took a deep breath and began to speak. I am hardworking," she said slowly. "I learn quickly. I try to stay organized and make sure everything I handle is done properly. I am responsible and honest. I don't ask for help often because I like to solve problems myself, but sometimes life becomes too heavy and I can't do it alone." Her voice was quiet but firm. The man listened carefully, nodding occasionally. He didn't interrupt or judge. When she finished, he asked about her dreams. "I want to give my child a good life," she said immediately. "I want him to feel safe, to have opportunities one never had. I want to work in a place where I can grow, learn, and eventually provide a home for us. I want to be strong enough to handle life without fear." Her words hung in the room for a moment. She had never spoken them out loud before, had never admitted them even to herself fully, but saying them now made them feel real. The man smiled softly. "Those are good goals," he said, "and they are possible. You have the determination and the willpower to achieve them. All you need is a chance to prove it." He then asked her to stay in the room while he spoke briefly with one of his assistants. They returned a few minutes later with a small stack of papers and a schedule. "This is not a promise of a permanent position," he said carefully, "but it is an opportunity. You will start with tasks that match your experience, and we will see how things go. Your work will be noticed, and your progress will matter." She nodded, her heart pounding. The words were not dramatic, but they carried more weight than anything she had heard in months. This was not charity. This was a real chance to rebuild her life. Her child watched quietly, sensing the importance of the moment. She smiled at him, and he smiled back, a small spark of hope lighting in his eyes. The next days were a blur of learning, adjusting, and proving herself. She arrived early every morning and stayed late, not because she was told to, but because she wanted to. Every task, no matter how small, she completed with care. She asked questions when she needed help and listened carefully when she was guided. Slowly, the office began to feel less intimidating. It became a place of growth instead of fear. Her child, meanwhile, began attending a nearby school. For the first time in weeks, he had a routine. They had friends to play with, teachers who noticed him, and a sense of security he hadn't felt in a long time. Watching him thrive gave her strength. Every small success reminded her why she had accepted this challenge, why she had taken the step forward despite fear. As she settled into her new routine, she began to notice that the man who had helped her was more than just a benefactor. He observed quietly, rarely interfering, but always aware of her efforts. He asked occasional questions, gave guidance when needed, and allowed her space to grow independently. She realized that he wasn't just giving her a handout. He was giving her a chance to become the person she wanted to be. One afternoon, after weeks of settling in, she was asked to attend a meeting with a few colleagues. She was nervous but prepared. She spoke clearly, shared her ideas, and answered questions honestly. To her surprise, her suggestions were appreciated and her effort acknowledged. After the meeting, the man approached her. "You did well today," he said quietly. "Your work is improving and people are noticing. Keep this up. Your child will be proud of you, and one day you will be proud of yourself too." She felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever said such words to her with sincerity. Not teachers, not bosses, not anyone. They had either criticized or ignored her, but he saw her, truly saw her. That evening, she walked home with her child, her steps lighter than they had been in months. The streets were the same, the cars the same, but her perspective had changed. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building. Every small task, every effort, was a brick in the foundation of a new life. At the hotel, she began to plan. She wrote down goals, small and large. She wanted to learn new skills, save money, and eventually find a permanent place for them to live. She wanted her child to have opportunities she had never had. She wanted stability, pride, and dignity, not just survival. She realized that the man's help had done more than give her shelter. It had reminded her of her own potential, her own strength. She was capable of more than she had believed. And she understood something important. Sometimes people needed not just help, but belief. Someone believing in her had unlocked a courage she hadn't felt in years. Weeks passed, and small successes began to pile up. She completed tasks efficiently, gained trust from colleagues, and even began mentoring others who needed guidance. Her child flourished in school, making friends and learning quickly. She noticed a change in him, the way he laughed without fear, the way he slept peacefully at night. Each small victory fueled her determination. One evening, as she returned from work, she found a man waiting outside the hotel. He greeted her warmly and asked about her day. She told him about a small accomplishment at work, a project she had managed successfully. He listened carefully and smiled. "You are doing more than surviving now," he said. "You are growing. Keep this up, and one day you will look back and realize that all of this started with a single step, the decision to accept help." She smiled, a genuine smile that had been rare in recent months. "I never thought I would get here," she admitted softly. "I was so afraid of failing, of being judged, of never finding a way out. But now, I feel like I have a chance." He nodded. "And you do. But remember, a chance is only useful if you use it. You've been using it well so far." She hugged her child tightly that night, feeling the warmth of possibility for the first time in years. She realized that the man's help had opened the door, but it was her courage, her determination, and her willingness to grow that would carry her through. The next morning, she woke with purpose. She knew that more challenges awaited, but she also knew that she was not alone anymore. She had a guide, a mentor, and someone who believed in her. More importantly, she had rediscovered belief in herself. Every small task she completed, every step forward, was a reminder that life could change, even for someone who had lost almost everything. She understood that her journey was only beginning, and that growth was gradual, built one step at a time. As she prepared for another day, her child beside her, she felt a quiet strength she hadn't known existed. She realized that real change didn't come from sudden miracles or grand gestures. It came from consistent effort, courage, and the willingness to take small steps, even when the path was uncertain. And in that understanding, she found hope, purpose, and the determination to keep moving forward, no matter what the future held. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks slowly became months. Life began to settle into a rhythm, one that the single mother had not known in years. Each morning, she woke up early, helped her child get ready for school, and then walked to the office where she had been given a chance. She had learned to manage her time, organize her tasks, and even anticipate the needs of her colleagues. What had once felt like an intimidating world now started to feel like a place she could belong. Her child adapted too. The school was welcoming. Teachers were patient, and he made friends who laughed and played with him. He would come home full of stories, sharing small victories like learning a new word or playing a game with his classmates. Watching him grow and feel confident gave her a new kind of energy. She realized that her work was not only for herself, it was for him. Every effort, every small achievement was for their future. At the office, her responsibilities grew. She was no longer only handling small tasks. She was given projects that required thought, organization, and decision-making. Some days were exhausting, but she embraced the challenge. She asked questions when she needed guidance and learned to solve problems on her own. The more she accomplished, the more respect she earned from her colleagues. She realized that people started to notice not just her hard work, but also her determination, her honesty, and her willingness to keep going even when things were difficult. The man who had given her this opportunity continued to observe quietly. He never interfered unnecessarily, but he was always aware of her progress. Occasionally, he would offer advice or encouragement, but mostly he allowed her to grow at her own pace. She came to understand that his method was deliberate. He wanted her to learn how to stand on her own, not rely on him indefinitely. That understanding gave her a sense of responsibility she had never felt before. One afternoon, after completing a significant project, she was called into a meeting with several colleagues. Her ideas were shared, her input valued, and her suggestions led to positive results. When the meeting ended, she returned to her desk, feeling a quiet pride that she had not felt in years. She realized that this was more than a job. It was validation, a recognition of her skills, her intelligence, and her determination. At home, life began to feel lighter too. She no longer had to worry about finding food, paying rent, or keeping her child safe every single day. The hotel room, while not permanent, provided stability, and that stability allowed her to focus on growth rather than survival. She spent evenings with her child, helping with homework, reading stories, and playing games. These moments were small but meaningful, a reminder that life could be peaceful and joyful again. She also began to form small connections with people around her, other parents at school, colleagues at the office, even neighbors she met during walks in the park. She realized that human connection, simple kindness, and support from others mattered as much as work and money. Her confidence grew not only because of her professional progress, but also because she felt part of community. One day, the man came to see her at her desk. He had a warm smile, the kind that made people feel understood without a word. "You've done well," he said. "I've been watching your progress, and it's clear you are learning, growing, and adapting, not just for yourself, but for your child as well." She felt a lump in her throat, unsure how to respond. Compliments had been rare in her life, especially ones that felt genuine. "Thank you," she said softly. I'm trying my best." "And it shows," he replied. "But I want you to know something important. What you've accomplished so far is only the beginning. If you continue like this, your future will not just be stable. It can be remarkable." She looked at him, absorbing the words. She had spent years thinking that survival was the only goal. She had never imagined that growth, success, and stability could be within her reach. His words planted a new kind of hope, a belief that the hard work she was putting in could lead to real change. At home that evening, she spoke with her child about the day. He listened, eyes wide with curiosity and pride. She realized that he was not only her reason to keep going, but also a witness to her transformation. He saw her strength, her courage, and the way she refused to give up. That realization gave her a new sense of purpose. The following weeks were filled with challenges, as well as small victories. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed, juggling responsibilities at work and caring for her child, but she learned to manage stress in ways she never had before. She asked for help when she needed it, learned from her mistakes, and celebrated small achievements. Each day, she grew stronger, more capable, and more confident. Her child thrived in school, showing curiosity, intelligence, and kindness. He would come home excited to share his experiences, and she would listen, encouraging him, teaching him, and nurturing his growth. She realized that giving him stability and love was as important as her professional success. The two of them were building a life together, one that was no longer defined by fear and uncertainty. One evening, she returned to the hotel after a long day and found a note slipped under the door. It was from a man who had helped her, simple and direct. "You are doing well. Keep going. Remember, this is just the beginning." She held the note in her hand, feeling a quiet sense of pride. The message was brief, but it carried weight. It reminded her that her efforts mattered, that she was being seen, and that her journey was not unnoticed. For the first time in years, she felt supported, encouraged, and capable. As months passed, her confidence continued to grow. She started taking on new responsibilities, learning new skills, and thinking about the future in ways she hadn't dared before. She dreamed of a permanent home, a stable life, and opportunity for her child that she herself had never had. Each small step she took was a building block toward that dream. She also began to notice changes in herself beyond work and survival. She felt more calm, patient, and capable of handling challenges without fear. She had learned that resilience was not just enduring hardship, but also recognizing opportunities for growth, learning from mistakes, and moving forward with courage. The man continued to support her quietly, occasionally offering advice or encouragement, but mostly allowing her to navigate her journey on her own. She realized that this was a true gift he had given her. Not money, not charity, but the chance to grow, to learn, and to build a life through her own effort and determination. One afternoon, she sat with her child in the park, watching him play with friends. She felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come so far from the nights of fear and uncertainty on the streets. Life was not perfect, but was better, brighter, and full of possibility. She realized that the small steps she had taken, the courage to accept help, and the determination to work hard had transformed not only her life, but also her child's. As the sun set, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, she felt a quiet resolve. The journey was far from over, but she had learned something crucial. Growth was possible. Even after hardship, and determination, courage, and small daily efforts could change the course of a life. She looked at her child, smiling as he laughed with his friends, and she knew that every struggle, every tear, every moment of fear had led them to this place. They were building a life together, one filled with hope, dignity, and the promise of a brighter future. And in that realization, she felt strength she had never known before. She had not only survived, she had begun to thrive. And the thought that one person's kindness could ignite such change stayed with her, a quiet reminder that life could be transformed in ways she had never imagined, one step at a time. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready. She had grown, she had learned, and she had discovered that resilience, courage, and love could carry her farther than she had ever dreamed. She had begun a journey that would shape not only her life, but her child's life as well. And for the first time, the future felt full of promise. The night came, calm and gentle, and she tucked her child into bed, watching him fall asleep with a peaceful expression. She stayed by his side for a few moments, reflecting on how far they had come. What had begun as desperation and fear had turned into hope and opportunity. And she knew that tomorrow they would wake up ready to face the world again, stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. Her journey was not finished, but she had learned the most important lesson. Growth is gradual, effort matters, and kindness, when met with courage, can change lives forever. Months had passed since the single mother had first been given a chance. Her life had changed slowly but surely, shaped by hard work, courage, and the quiet support of the man who believed in her. She had moved from surviving day by day to planning, growing, and building a life for herself and her child. Every small success had strengthened her resolve, and every challenge had taught her resilience. One morning, as she prepared to leave for work, she looked around the small apartment she had rented after leaving the hotel. It was modest but stable, filled with the small belongings that marked a home. For the first time, she felt ownership over her life. She had saved enough to secure this place on her own, without fear being turned away. Her child ran around, laughing and played with the small toys he had brought, and she felt a deep sense of pride and contentment. At work, she had grown into a valued team member. Colleagues trusted her judgment, listened to her suggestions, and relied on her initiative. She had taken on bigger projects, learned new skills, and even started helping others who were struggling. She remembered how intimidating the office had felt at first, and she smiled at the thought of how far she had come. She had not only adapted to this new environment, but had thrived in it. The man who had helped her continued to observe quietly. He rarely offered praise, but his presence was steady and reassuring. He had seen her transformation firsthand, and knew that her growth was a result of her own determination. One afternoon, he called her into his office for a conversation she would never forget. "Sit down," he said gently. She did, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. "I have been watching your journey," he began. "You have faced challenges, worked hard, and grown in ways that few people ever do. I want you to understand something important. Your life now is the result of your courage, your choices, and your determination. My role was only to open the first door. You walked through it yourself." She listened quietly, absorbing his words. For years, she had believed that life was something that happened to her, that she was powerless to change her circumstances. But now, she realized that she had played a central role in her transformation. She had made choices, taken risks, and faced fear head-on. Her own strength had carried her farther than she had ever imagined. I can't thank you enough," she said softly. "You gave me a chance when I had nothing. You believed in me when no one else did." He shook his head. "It was never about me. It was about you. And now, it's about what you can do for yourself, for your child, and for others who need guidance. You have learned not just to survive, but to grow, and that is more important than anything else." The conversation stayed with her as she returned to her work. She felt a new sense of purpose, not just for herself, but for those around her. She realized that her journey could inspire others, that her experience of struggle and growth could provide hope to people who were still trapped in fear and uncertainty. She began thinking about ways to give back, to help other women and children who were struggling the way she once had. At home, she shared these thoughts with her child. "One day," she said, "we can help others like people helped us. We can show them that there's hope, that life can change, and that courage and effort matter." Her child smiled, eyes bright. "I want to help too," he said. She hugged him tightly, feeling a deep sense of pride. Not only had she changed her own life, but she was teaching her child the value of kindness, resilience, and hope. Weeks later, she began taking small steps toward helping others. She volunteered at a local shelter, offering guidance and support to women who were struggling to rebuild their lives. She shared her story when asked, not for recognition, but to show that change was possible. Each woman she helped reminded her of her own journey and strengthened her belief that small acts of support could create lasting impact. Her work continued to flourish. She earned recognition for her dedication, skill, and integrity. The projects she managed grew in importance, and her reputation as someone who could be trusted and relied upon spread. Yet she never lost sight of the lessons she had learned, the value of patience, the importance of empathy, and the understanding that true success is measured not only by personal achievement, but also by the positive effect one has on others. One evening, as she walked home from work, she saw the man waiting outside the building. He smiled as she approached, and she felt the same quiet warmth she had felt the first time she met him. "You've done well," he said simply, "not just in work, but in life. You have transformed your circumstances, and in doing so, you have changed the life of your child as well. That is an accomplishment greater than any project or position." She felt tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "You gave me the first chance, but everything else, I had to find it myself." He nodded. "And that is exactly what I hope will happen. You discovered your own strength. You learned to trust yourself. That is the greatest gift of all." In that moment, she realized how much she had grown. She no longer felt fear when thinking about the future. She no longer doubted her ability to provide, protect, and nurture. She had learned that life could be transformed through courage, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace opportunity when it appeared. Her child, walking beside her, held her hand tightly. She looked down at him and saw hope, curiosity, and confidence reflected in his eyes. He had learned from her example, and she understood that the lesson she imparted to him now would shape his own journey. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a privilege. The days turned into months, and the single mother continued to build a life of stability and growth. She saved money, expanded her skills, and continued to volunteer, helping others navigate the hardships she had once faced. Every small action reinforced the understanding that life was not just about what one received, but also about what one gave in return. One weekend, she took her child to the park, a place they had once walked past in fear, when they had nowhere to go. Now they walked freely, laughing and playing. She watched other families, children running and parents smiling, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had experienced despair, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace life fully. At that moment, she understood something she had never realized before. The man's act of kindness had not only saved her life, it had sparked a transformation that reached beyond her own existence. It had created a ripple effect, inspiring growth, hope, and courage in both herself and her child. She also knew that the greatest impact of all would come from passing that hope on to others. Months later, the man visited her once more, quietly observing the life she had built. She invited him into her home, a place filled with warmth, laughter, and stability. Her child ran to greet him, smiling without fear, and she realized that the life they had fought for was no longer just a dream. It was reality. "You did it," he said, smiling. "You created something meaningful. You didn't just survive, you thrived. You've taken the opportunity one offered and made it your own. That is remarkable." She shook her head softly, emotion filling her chest. "It wasn't just me," she said. "It was you who gave me the first chance, and I've tried to honor that by building a better life for us. I hope one day I can help others the way you helped me." He nodded. "And you will. That is the true measure of success. Not money, not position, but the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. You have already begun that work." She smiled, looking at her child playing nearby, laughing freely, full of curiosity and joy. She realized that everything she had endured, the fear, the struggle, the uncertainty, had led them to this point. Life had tested her, but it had also given her the chance to grow, to rise above hardship, and create a future filled with hope and possibility. In the quiet of that afternoon, she understood a truth that would guide her forever. One act of kindness can change a life, but it is courage, perseverance, and belief in oneself that transforms that chance into something lasting. She had been given an opportunity, but she had walked through it, step by step, building a life that reflected strength, hope, and love. Her child ran to her, holding a small flower picked from the park. "For you, Mom," he said. She took it and smiled, realizing that life's greatest rewards are often simple yet profound. They had endured fear, uncertainty, and loss, but they had emerged stronger, together, and ready to face the future. And in that moment, standing in the park with her child and looking back at the journey they had taken, she knew that life could truly change when courage meets opportunity, and when kindness is met with determination. She had been given a chance that had changed everything, and she had made it into a life worth living, a life full of hope, dignity, and endless possibility.